Right, that is bang on 10 o'clock. So we'll get started. Welcome to today's webinar, Mastering SEO for Lead Generation, Winning Strategies for 2024. Now, SEO is one of those things that is kind of adjacent to a lot of the stuff that Spotler do. So luckily, as you can see, we've got with us Ben Alfrey, who's Operations Director at Session Media. We've known Session Media for a number of years now, worked very closely with them. So Ben's going to be doing the main bit, sharing his SEO expertise in ways that I cannot even begin to touch. I'm just here to kind of tie it all together at the beginning. A few bits, just logistics, I think, before we get started. We've got about 45 minutes of content here today. So then the rest of that hour that we've blocked off until 11, we're aiming to save that for Q&A. Hopefully on your GoToWebinar console panel thing, you can see you've got a chat box and you've got a questions box. Now, I'd really like you to put Q&A things in the question box. The only difference it makes in practical terms is that the question box will tie your question to the email address that you registered with. So if there's a question either for myself or for Ben that we don't know off the top of our heads, or that it requires a longer answer that we've got time for, or if there's so many questions we just can't answer them all in the time before we let you go back to your day-to-day bits, we can then follow up with you one-to-one on emails after that. So pop questions in the Q&A box at any point, and we'll come to them and answer them in a batch, right at the end of the session. We're recording the webinar today, so if we're going a bit fast, if you miss out things, if you're taking notes, then don't worry, that will be available. Once we finish here today, I'll go away, I'll polish it up a little bit, I'll trim off that bit at the beginning where I did the sound check and the technical testing, and then we'll aim to send it out to you by sort of lunchtime tomorrow. Give us 24 hours just to make sure that's all done properly. Those of you joining us live here on Thursday, then you'll also get a PDF copy of this slide deck to go back to as well. If you're new to Spotler, if this is your first or an early Spotler webinar for you, then do check your junk box as well, because we use a specific domain to send out those emails, and so your spam filter might think, oh, that looks a bit odd, that's different from normal Spotler things. Have a look in there, it might get caught. And if it's not in there either, then shortly after that email goes out to all of you, the video will be uploaded on spotler.co.uk/resources as a free available download. Just pop your email address in again, bang, gets sent across to you. So you will be able to get hold of this recording one way or another. As I said, there's a whole bunch of names there that I don't recognize, having done a load of these webinars before. Particularly warm welcome to you guys, and I thought I'd spend just a minute or two saying who Spotler are if you don't know us very well already. And we're an all-in-one marketing automation platform, and our job is to make you guys more successful, more efficient, better at doing your marketing jobs. About 4,000 companies use some of our Spotler products, whether that's the email platform, whether that's social media management, whether it's live chat on the website, whether it's CRM, whether it's website personalization, or whether it's Spotler Leads, the IP lookup and tracking tool, which is most relevant to what we're talking about here today. And I'll come back to that at the end of Ben's presentation. And as well as the platform itself, we're going to give you access to these tools, but there's a whole raft of people that sit behind that and empower you, make it better for you to work with, whether that's the support team that are there to resolve one-on-one queries, the account management that is kind of there for the long-term relationship, or deliverability and pro services that are going to dive into the more technical bits that you can come to them if there's a more technical thing that you want to do that you don't know how to do in the platform. And the reason I talk about those guys is when you look at either our Trustpilot or G2 reviews, which we're very, very proud of, the one thing that I hope you pick up from them is that nearly all of them name drop someone in account management, in tech, or in support. So the platform is excellent, of course it is, it's great, and the people behind it are great as well, and that's the thing that I think really sets us apart from a lot of the larger companies out there, that kind of personal, interactive service. Now, so that's the kind of Spotler intro. So, hang on, I'm going to hand over to Ben now to talk to you about the technical SEO bits that are, as I said, far more far more technical than what I know how to do. So Ben, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. I've just hit share.
Yeah, you can
And
see
I'm
your.
just going to hit present on this. Obviously, I can't see the webinar hosting browser now. So can you see a picture of me?
On that for you. There we go.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that, Richard. And thank you for inviting me to talk to you about SEO. As Richard kindly introduced, my name is Ben Alfrey. I look after operations at Session Media. We're a global performance marketing agency. You can find me across various sort of different places, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I do tend to do slightly more sort of deep dives in SEO strategy more frequently around YouTube. So if you want something that's sort of relevant, up to date, I'd probably point that as the go-to resource. So a couple of reasons why you might be here today, and I just firstly want to say thank you for taking an hour out of your day to spend it with me to sort of learn, hopefully, a little bit more about SEO and how you can sort of apply SEO within your business today. So three sort of things that hopefully I'll answer throughout this. So if you're here because you want to know how to drive more leads with SEO, you also want to know if SEO is worth the investment. Maybe you've hit green on the SEO, on the Yoast sort of traffic light system that they have, but oddly nothing's happened. And look, if it's now away from your desk, that's also fine as well. So I'm just going to run through a few sort of social media credentials. I appreciate we might be a totally new business to all of you. So our team is built to drive pipeline, not just conversions, and we've generated our clients sort of millions over the last few years in pipeline revenue. We're very good at ensuring that we have synergy amongst our SEO teams, our paid teams, our creative teams, our content writers. They all move in the same direction, all trying to hit the same sort of KPIs. And we're very proud of sort of the system and the team that we've got. And they're all engineered to essentially generate success, and success is good qualified conversations for a sales team. We've worked sort of hundreds of clients over the last sort of 6+ years, loads of different industries all over the globe. I think one of the things we're most proud of is 5 of these have generated sort of funding and even sort of acquisition partly off of the back of the activity that we've been working with them on for a number of years. So Continua acquired by Cognizant, Poly AI qualified £40 million worth of funding, Mesh $30 million, I should say. Lawshore, one of our longest clients, got acquired by Clear year before last, and 4D, again, one of our longest clients, they're acquired by RedCentric as well. And it's really nice to sort of see these businesses get acquired and for managing directors to sort of achieve their their sort of overriding goals for the business as well. I mentioned I'm very active on LinkedIn. I do quite a few sort of case study breakdowns, do sort of video breakdowns as to how we get successes with clients. I think it's really important for SEO that there's lots of transparency. It's also good to know that a lot of the nuances within sort of the SEO system change quite a lot. So what I'm going to take you guys through today is sort of the principles and the processes that we will run for a typical business. But within those sort of principles, a lot has changed over the last year or two. And it's important that, we're always constantly testing things to see what works today, because quite often a lot of what we did even a year ago, actually we've changed somewhat, or in some respect, because we weren't necessarily getting the same results. So yeah, quite active on LinkedIn. I do a lot of posting on sort of case studies and various other bits as well. We ranked our own site for SEO agency at one point. It's quite interesting, the results that sort of came out of that, and I will aim to touch on this a little bit more later on. And we've won awards for the work we've done as well. So I'll go through this campaign towards the end of the webinar, but this is a campaign that we ran with CPD standards. The bottom line with this, it was great to win the awards, but the most important thing was we increased the number of leads that they generated, and the ROI from the activity was over 1,000%, which was obviously fantastic for the business. So I'm going to dive straight into sort of the SEO process. And as I said, I could probably spend hours on each of these different elements. I'm trying my best to sort of package this all up in 45 minutes or so. As Richard said, if there's sort of key questions, or if you want to know maybe a little bit more info about one of these sort of particular areas, obviously drop a comment into the GoToWebinar, hit me up on Twitter. I'm always happy to sort of answer this stuff as well. So look, we need a first slide just to make sure we're on the same page. What is SEO? Essentially, when you put a query into Google or Bing, it's the listings that sit underneath the sponsored, and you've probably noticed the evolution of the search engine results pages changed quite a lot over the last couple of years or so. So this can be harder to miss, but where it says sponsored at the top of the search results page, essentially those companies are bidding, they're paying money to exist there, and everything that sort of sits below that, that is what we call organic, or SEO, so to speak. A couple of key points before I go into this. It's always good to think about Google as a private company. So that means it costs them money to crawl your site. So whenever they expend resources and money to crawl your site, you want to make it worth their time, right? SEO requires multiple different skill sets. You sort of need a technical and a developer skill set. You need content and a creative skill set. And you also need someone that's good on the email side for the outreach and the PR. The final part to this is that other marketing channels do impact SEO as well. And I won't go too much into kind of what's changed, because I want to give you guys essentially something actionable that you can take away from this. But there's been a lot of movement towards using things such as like brand signals to influence sort of authority on a domain, which subsequently impacts ranking and various sort of other things. So if you want to chat a little bit more around sort of thought leadership, where the industry is going, I'm more than happy to sort of take this away from the webinar. Okay, so there's three sort of core pillars of SEO, and as I mentioned, these haven't actually changed too much in the last year, but their importance and how you sort of operate within these pillars, I would say, has. So the first one is the technical aspect of the SEO. So this is ensuring that Google can crawl, render, index your content. The bottom line is if a Google bot can't access your content, or they can't access it easily, or they can't understand the words that you've put on a page, they're not going to serve you in an index to a user that potentially is searching a query for your content, right? So this is kind of like the fundamental. The content side of it, so this is essentially anything that is written word, anything that sort of exists outside of the, well, technically in the code base, but more sort of the written words of the actual content that you've got on the site. And then the third part to this is the link building and the sort of off page. So these are signals that exist outside of your website that essentially influence how your site's ranking. So by getting a piece of coverage, by getting a link on the bbc.co.uk, in the Guardian, that's a really, really strong authority signal. Google uses these sort of signals as almost like a vote of confidence that you're legitimate, you're trustworthy, and broadly speaking, it's these signals that are sort of the engine to ranking your site. And I'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail as well. So this is kind of what a typical SEO process would look like for a client. Now I must add a bit of a caveat with this, that depending on industry, depending on competitiveness of a keyword or a keyword set, we might sort of over-index one part of this versus another, and I'll come on to that a little bit more. But generally speaking, this is sort of the common process that we'll go through with a client, and I'll go through each of these sections throughout the webinar in a little bit more detail. The one thing that I would say is probably the most important part of this is what we do right at the start. And for every single client, we deliver them a client insights document. And I'd say this is really useful to also do, you might be new to your business, right? You might have just joined as a marketing manager, for example. Doing a bit of an internal audit of everything about the business is quite critical to understand. Firstly, if SEO is the right channel to pursue, but also sort of understanding the sales processes, the types of products and services we offer, the types of markets we're trying to break into, the types of customers we're trying to receive. We do all of that. We get all of that from the client at the start, and that will essentially impact in some respect what this process would look like. So we know that if a client is maybe going after, they've got plenty of sort of service lines, they're going after SMB, maybe they're a business that's been operating for sort of 10 plus years, it would be quite easy for us to sort of mine down a handful of keywords, have a look at competitors, identify sort of what the gap analysis is on content and links, and then essentially we can build quite a nice sort of roadmap to achieve what the KPIs that they've listed out in the client insights doc can be, basically. So getting everything sort of about the business from the MD, from the CEO at the start is absolutely critical before sort of diving headfirst into this blindly. So a high level on each of these sections, we tech audit a site, having a look at Google's ability to actually find and index the pages across your site. We'll run a content audit, so we'll literally meticulously look at every single URL. We'll cross-reference it with potential sort of keyword targets. We'll use keyword research interchangeably with this. Obviously, the goal of SEO is to generate good qualified conversations for a sales team. So when we look at keywords, we want to make sure that we're clearing that bottom of funnel, we're clearing and covering the sort of high intent, the buyer ready, quote unquote, keywords first, and then we essentially work our way up the funnel. We use a combination of the content audit and keyword research to essentially scope a content plan, usually for sort of the next 12 months or so. And then depending on maybe a client's resource and availability, we may then deliver sort of content briefs, we may create the content, we may roll out optimizations on a varying sliding scale, depending on what the client's KPIs are. And alongside this as well is we'll also run sort of link building campaigns. And I'll come onto this in a little bit more detail towards the end. It's probably the more sort of interesting or unknown sort of part of the SEO process, but we like to create sort of nice creative campaigns that are quite newsworthy, pitch these into sort of competitor domains, press, etc., with the goal of just getting a link back to the site. So I'll come on to all of these in a little bit more detail. The final part to this, and probably one of the most important aspects as well, is having a reporting dashboard that we share with clients, so we're both singing from the same hymn sheet. Sorry to use a classic phrase there, but ensuring that we're tracking the metrics that they're reporting upwards, and also us having access to the CRM as well. There's nothing we like more than after sort of working with them for a couple of months is sort of interrogating like the sales journey, having a look at what the sorts of questions that prospects are asking sales. Can we use that content back into our landing pages, into our content? Can we use it to reshape messaging? It's all a goldmine of information. And of course, making sure that the opportunities we are generating through organic are going through to pipeline and ultimately revenue as well. And I think that's really important here, that SEO is a marketing channel. It requires investment, and we should be looking at generating an ROI on that investment. I think there's far too much noise in SEO where we get hung up on keywords and alt text and page speeds, whereas actually we need to look at it holistically, and we need to understand that if we do this for 12 to 18 months, what's the ROI we're going to generate out of it? And that's the sort of thing we'll try and capture in a client insights document right before we go ahead and plan a campaign. Richard, you said that this was all recorded, right? So I appreciate I'm going to blitz through this quite quickly. So if it's all recorded, that's great. Technical SEO. Where to begin with this? I think not all sites will need a heavy-hitting, big sort of technical audit on the site. And again, we've won so many clients from agencies that would spend months and months on the technical side of the website when it really doesn't need it. And I picked out two tweets here that I think summarize this very nicely, especially the one from Candle on the right-hand side. Essentially, the bigger your website, the more important technical is to that website. And by that, I mean, if you're an e-com brand and you've got maybe hundreds of thousands of product lines, product SKUs, Shopify will typically create 4 URLs every product SKU that goes out, then technical should be a huge focus, because us spending a month resolving, or maybe 2 months auditing and resolving technical issues, we know is going to have a noticeable impact on Google's ability to crawl and index the site. An example we had with this a few years back was we had a client that was on a Shopify site. They would have their category pages as you'd expect, but all the product lines that would sit on the category would be non-indexable to Google. So essentially Shopify used one version of the URL, and I won't go into this in too much detail, but essentially Shopify out the box would use one version of the URL that wasn't indexable instead of the indexable version. Don't know why at the time. So we knew that auditing that, identifying that, and then fixing that would have notable impacts on Google's ability to serve those products in their search engine, right? So essentially what we did was on that category page, or those category pages, all the products, we essentially ensured that all the product URLs were indexable in Google. So that meant suddenly Google had, you know, thousands more pages that they could serve in their index compared to just 50. You know, a huge sort of impact on the business, picked up lots of long tail sort of searches for specific product lines. And we saw a nice sort of hockey stick in the number of sort of sales that came through the site. That would be a good example of where we'd spend a lot more time on the technical. If you've got a 100-page site, a 300-page site, 500-page site, doing a sense check in Google Search Console, identifying which URLs have been canonicalized or are non-indexable, running a quick sort of crawl on those, identifying why, speaking to your higher up and understanding, you know, are these intended to be out of the index? If so, then it's fine. Let's move on to the more impact generating activity. So bigger the site size, more important does the technical sort of aspect of SEO carry. Smaller, lower importance, or less work needs to be done on it. The technical audits we do run for those bigger sites are pretty in-depth. We'll look at everything from sort of different scoring systems across page speed. We'll look at different types of internal links, broken links. We'll look at sort of canonicals throughout the site as well, among sort of various other things. And, you know, if we ran any site through this checklist, we will always pick up something. But it's just making sure that, you know, if a site comes to us and it's maybe sort of 10,000 URLs, I'll consider running it through sort of a deep dive technical audit. Otherwise, we'll just look at the high impact stuff, which is usually given to us by Google Search Console, which is a free tool that Google provides us users to show you how they crawl and index your site. So content SEO, I sort of split this out into 4 parts. So the content audit side of it, the keyword research, the intent, which I think is really important, and building topical authority as well. So the content audit, so I break down into what this is specifically. Whenever we take on a new site, we need to understand the pages and the content that they've already written for that site. You know, it's no good us doing a keyword research piece and recommending 100 keywords of which they've already got pages targeting that keyword, right? So essentially what we do is we go through line by line of every single URL. We'll then cross-reference this with Google Search Console data, with volumes. We might even split this out by region if they're a global business targeting many sort of languages. And we'll also cross-reference this with Google Ads cost per click data. And the reason we do this is Google Ads cost per click data is a really good sort of signal to indicate whether they're sort of buying intent behind that keyword. Reason being is that if a business is willing to spend, say, £50 or $50 on just a single click for a keyword, that sort of suggests that there's an ROI behind that investment. You know, there's sort of intent behind that phrase. So having another column with sort of estimated cost per click is another signal that we can use when deciphering sort of intent behind different phrases. Once we sort of done that sort of export and our team sort of cross-referenced it against Google Search Console, we will do a bit of keyword research to identify what the quote-unquote best keyword is for that page based on the page intent and where it sort of sits in the funnel. And then at the end of this, we'll make a decision on what to do with every single URL. So that could be leave, it could be optimize for the keyword that we've identified, and it could be merge. So if we've got a client that has written 3 pieces of content all about the same or similar sort of keyword set, then typically what we'd recommend is collating those 3 URLs into one sort of power page, because that's going to have a bigger impact on, or, you know, it's more likely to rank than having it split out across multiple different pages. And believe it or not, this is actually quite common. If you have a site that has maybe had a number of different content specialists on it, maybe a number of different marketing managers on it, they'll come in, they might contribute their own pieces without sort of auditing the existing work. Quite often we'll find that actually there's similar content written about the same sort of keywords, albeit the content written more recently might be more up to date, which is fantastic from a Google freshness point of view, but still collating all those articles into one is where you're going to get more bang for your buck, basically. And then the last point to this is identifying any sort of 404 pages as well. So any pages that used to exist for some reason have been taken down, we'll identify this. And we also cross-reference old Google Analytics data to show the client whether those 404 pages actually generated any traffic and whether they want to bring them back. So I've gone through a few sort of common areas, but other ones here. Poor internal linking, I'd say, is one of the most common sort of areas that we find, especially across the content audit. So an example of this is you publish a page to your website. Google might not be able to find it if it's not linked to from the menu, if it's not linked to from a blog, if it's not linked to from a category page. Google might actually struggle to find this. Now, one thing I will add is that more recently Google's got a little bit better in finding these orphan pages. This is what they're called, where it's a page that exists in your sitemap but doesn't actually exist anywhere on the site. So if a user came to your homepage, they wouldn't actually be able to find it. They've got better at finding this, but that also depends on how authoritative your site is. So if I started at benswebsite.com and maybe I published 10 articles and all of these articles were sort of independent of one another, I didn't link to them from maybe my menu structure, Google will probably have a hard time finding these pages. And remember the point I made at the start, it costs Google money to crawl your website. So if they can't find something easily, they're not going to crawl your website definitely trying to find potential pages that might exist. They're just going to give up and not index it, basically. So you want to make life as easy as possible for them as well. Very little content across pages or very few pages. Big point to this is word count isn't a ranking signal, never has been. I don't think it ever will be, really. But if you've got pages that might have a sentence that doesn't address the user query or fulfill the user intent well enough, these pages are going to work against you. So you'll find if you've got, say, a question in a header, what is B2B marketing, or what is marketing, or what is lead generation, and then maybe you have a couple of sentences that answer it. Technically, that answers the user query and that will fulfill the intent. But you probably want to add a little bit more as to your opinion on it, and maybe add something new to the page that isn't found across other pages, other sites on competitor domains that are also writing about that subject. So think about originality if you don't have a lot of content to write. Pages not optimized for keywords, I think that's quite self-explanatory. Pages are just kind of written, there's no sort of keyword focus there. Google has come out recently and said that this isn't necessarily a bad thing. If you've been working in an industry for 10 years and you want to write about sort of trends and developments in it, absolutely, this is a good thing to do. But if you're expecting that article to rank for a certain keyword and it's not optimized for that keyword, it's likely not. Multiple pages competing for the same keywords, I've just touched on this, and very few quality backlinks from third-party sites. I'll come on to this in a little bit. I think one thing that has been quite notable in the last sort of year or so, or yeah, I'd say even more so in the last year, but probably 2 years, is the change in the search engine results page. So what I did here is I've put in a query which was industrial cleaning services. I had a look at what the search engine results page looked into November 2003, which you might be able to sort of see down there, and what it was showing 2 years prior to that in November 2021, so a 2-year difference. What you might notice is on the left-hand side, so this is the 2021 results, all the URLs are essentially they're targeting just that specific keyword. And what I mean by that is essentially these are what we'd call like universal URLs. So these are pages that would rank across the whole of the UK. So whether I was down in Surrey and Guildford where I am, or up in Manchester or Birmingham, wherever I am, I would see the cleaning services group.co.uk and their industrial cleaning page at number 1. Fast forward 2 years to November 2023, and you'll notice down here that all of these pages now, pretty much all of these URLs have dropped out of first page and they've been replaced by localized search pages. And what's happened here is Google over the years have identified that if someone is searching industrial cleaning services, the person searching that wants someone close to them. So instead of providing a company that might be based down in Surrey, but they're usually searching from Bristol, say in this case here, that user wants to be served localized Bristol results. And if you go to Google now, quite often when you put any query into the search bar, if you notice when you hit enter on that search query, underneath, Google will actually pull your location. So you might have seen this. So it might say searching from Guildford, UK, Bristol, UK, Manchester, UK, for example. And what Google are doing more often now is they're actually localizing your results. So you don't necessarily need to put, say, industrial cleaning services near me anymore, or industrial cleaning services Bristol, because if I'm in Bristol and I'm searching industrial cleaning services, Google knows that as a fact, and they will serve me results from Bristol, basically. So we need to make sure that the intent of our pages are aligned with the searcher. So if we want to target users in Bristol, we need to make sure we have a dedicated industrial cleaning services page that is tailored around Bristol as a location, basically. So a lot more of what we've been doing for our clients that do operate across the UK is, instead of having one page and trying to target all regions, is we'll have one sort of category page, but this will also point to lots of localized versions of that page, basically. And we're getting a lot more success operating in that system, rather than trying to get one page to rank for everything, which isn't, it's going to be a far harder job, if at all it's going to be possible, which I don't believe it really is. So keyword research, I'm sure we've all done a bit of keyword research in the past. As mentioned, we do a bit of this for the content audit to make sure that if we're recommending a page to be optimized for a keyword, we have the best keyword for that page. But we also want to make sure that we're capturing other keywords that are at the mid funnel and top of funnel. The real sort of goal of this is we want to make sure that we are pretty much targeting every single keyword that exists in a category, and we want to have content written about that. This is great from a topical authority point of view that I'll come on to, but it's also a good signal for Google to indicate that you're an expert in the space. If you're writing a lot of really good high quality content that goes deep on a specific subject, you're adding original sort of thoughts and opinions to it, and you've clearly been operating in the space for some time, Google will reward you for that, because they'll see you as an expert, and therefore they'll want to prioritize you above maybe other domains that haven't written as much, or maybe don't have, or the content quality, I should say, isn't as in-depth or as strong as maybe the content that you're creating is. So our keyword research pieces, we're aiming to pick up every single keyword sort of within a business category that we can find. We'll have a look at sort of estimated traffic. We'll have a look at estimated sort of cost per clicks. We'll also have a look at clicks per search as well. Quite often a user will put in a query. Actually, Google serves the answer to their query in a featured snippet, and therefore the number of clicks for that search is a lot lower than maybe industry standards. So we want to understand what those look like. And then we'll cross-reference it with your Google Search Console data, which you can do via Search Console for Sheets in Google Sheets, just to make sure that we don't have any content that's already targeting these keywords as well. I mentioned prior to this that we do use the sort of Google Ads data by the Google Ads team to sort of help steer this as well. So anything, if you've got a paid marketing team and they're doing Google Ads, make sure that the keywords you want to go after from an SEO perspective are aligned with the keywords that they're targeting. One better is if they've been maybe running Google Ads for 3 to 6 months, and they've got data that indicates certain keywords actually turn to revenue for the business. That's sort of like the golden nugget that we're looking for, right? Because that gives you enough validation to target that keyword from an SEO perspective and potentially spend sort of 9 to 12 months of investment trying to rank it. So this concept of topical authority, I have briefly touched on it, but Google looks at sites in sort of entities, I would say. So again, if I use the example of the industrial cleaning services provider, if I'm an industrial cleaning services company, so I have an industrial cleaning services website, that's all we do, but we do it for most industries. What I want to do is obviously create my service lines. So that might be creating content that is targeting in all sort of the major cities in the UK, industrial cleaning plus location. It might be that I also offer like warehouse cleaning. It might be that I also offer sort of contract cleaning or deep cleaning or whatever. But I also want to make sure that I'm targeting keywords at the mid funnel and the top funnel. And what I mean by that is users at the mid funnel sort of indicate a bit of intent, but maybe aren't ready to buy. So it might be something like, how much does industrial cleaning cost? Or, who are the best providers of industrial cleaning? It's not saying I want the services now and I want to speak to someone. It's still the informational seeking. The top of funnel is the question, high level sort of questions. What is industrial cleaning? So the good thing about hitting the mid funnel is obviously we can capture people that might be in consideration and pass them down to the service pages, hopefully to convert them. But the other side to this is, as I mentioned, if Google comes onto our site and sees that we've got 500 different articles around industrial cleaning, offering original thoughts, pointing users off to really good knowledgeable resources where they can educate themselves around this, they're essentially going to reward that. They're going to give us sort of a higher reputation score, and therefore we're more likely to rank than against maybe one of our competitors that's only written 20 articles around the same subject and it's quite thin in content. So essentially trying to cover and create content for everything that sort of falls within your category should be sort of the long-term goal of this, and obviously budgets will determine how quickly you can do that. So when we've done all of that, we essentially take all these outcomes and turn it into a content plan, right? So if we've done a technical audit, high-level technical work, and we've got some fixes that we need to put in place, and we've done a content audit and identified that we've got maybe 15 pages that need optimized. We've done a keyword research piece, and there's sort of 30 keywords that we think are good targets for the business. We'll then essentially create this into a content plan, and this is sort of how you build an strategic SEO roadmap, I should say, where you have the URL, the target keyword, the status of that page, and it's a nice sort of way to operate. So I think sometimes for SEO, you don't really know where to start. You don't really know how to build a plan for it. This is a plan that sort of comes from the managing director, the client insights. It comes from reviewing the technical, having a look at our current infrastructure in the content audit, having a look outside of our website at the keyword research, and then putting all that together into a nice sort of easy to follow roadmap, basically. So when we go into content creation, we work with quite a few clients, some of which have a big content team. Yep, just give us what you need to give us and we'll go off and create. And some are, they are the only person in the marketing team, right? So we try and cater for everything. So for the people that have a written sort of team, we'd create these content briefs. And I don't really have time to go through these in that much depth, but they're essentially 9 pages long, these briefs. They're super thorough. So if there's a keyword that we've identified in the keyword research tool that we've agreed with the business would be a really good target for the website, we'll essentially obviously list that. We'll then provide the sort of support or secondary keywords that Google also associates with that primary keyword. We'll also list things such as potential information gaps. So what I mean by this is, when we create this content, we want to produce original thoughts on it. The way to think about it is we want to try and grow the industry or grow the knowledge within that specific keyword. So if, for example, I was writing something around like what is lead generation, for example, something super simple, I might identify that an information gap is potentially using CRM data, having a look at prospect conversations, having a look for sort of sound bites that we can pull back into our landing pages and use this to get in front of prospects that are still in that consideration phase. My guess would be that if you put in what is lead generation, a lot of the articles that are ranking for that phrase don't actually talk about that side of things or those side of things. And essentially Google is looking for what new information could be found on other pages that prospects could be looking for, and then they will reward your page. So if they go through the first sort of 3 URLs and it's all pretty much the same content, in the top 3 ranking positions, and in position 8, you provide something that's new to the industry that could be or is very helpful for a user searching that same query. They're going to go, well, this is great for the user. We're going to bump that up to number 1 or number 2 because it's new information that the user can't find anywhere else. So yeah, it's the goal is always to try and essentially broaden like the knowledge base within that sort of keyword category. I think it's the easier way to think about it. But yeah, we provide sort of quite a tight structure on writing fundamental sentence structures, short paragraphs. I know when I was at school, I was taught paragraphs should be like 4 sentences. That's not really how people consume information these days. So 1 to 2 sentence paragraphs are fine. It's good for the user, good for Google, making sure that headings are clear and they direct the user down and it flows all quite nicely. Having your key takeaways, your key outputs at the top. So a bullet point list of the summary, the exec summary of the article is really good user experience, and Google really likes that sort of stuff. These are all things that we sort of take a client through if they've got a writing team, basically. So by this sort of point, we've aligned the content roadmap. We sort of sorted out any technical issues. Now the beauty of working with an agency is this sort of all happens at once. So you're not kind of waiting for one, then the other. We'll do the link building when we're doing like the content side of things as well. And when I talk about link building, I'm going to go through 4 different points here. So what is link building, types of link building, the future of link building, and I'll take you through some examples as well. So firstly, what is link building? I've touched on it. It's essentially any occasion that you get a link from one website to your website. That is link building in its simplest form. Now, of course, within this, there's a lot that goes into what constitutes like a quality link, and how much page rank or link equity or link juice, whatever you want to call it, is passed between the external site to the internal. A lot of what we've got a dedicated team to this, and a lot of what we do is making sure that when we generate these links for our clients, that they're links that essentially do pass enough page rank to rank their site. And this industry has changed a bucket load in the last few years. So us sort of keeping on top of it has been the thing that I'd say is one of our core value propositions as an agency, right? But in its simplest form, a link is a backlink is a third-party link from one website to yours. Google uses these as like a vote of confidence, but of course there's a lot of quality signals that go into what sort of constitutes the quality of that vote, essentially. Loads of different types of link building. I've tried to simplify it here a little bit. So the one that we do the most is this sort of creative link building, where we'll create a story of some kind and then we'll pitch it into our competitors' links, so we can see which links our competitors have got. If they're ranking the top sort of 3 positions, we know that Google likes those links, so we'll go after those as a priority. We'll also go after sort of industry press. We've got some journalists that we've got good relationships with that will also sort of pitch in, but the real sort of hook comes within a good story, right? So we need to make sure that we create something that is either engaging, creative on the eye, or a really good sort of story that's quite newsworthy in the industry, with the goal of essentially generating that coverage. Digital PR, we do a little bit of this, but we are not a digital PR agency. So we're signed up to services where journalists are sort of requesting questions and various sort of other things. In the client insights document, there is also a section where we'll get our managing directors or the CEOs kind of thoughts on the industry. So if we get a journalist asking these sort of questions, we've already got comments from them that we can quickly go back to them on and try and secure some links. And then sort of passive links as well. So these are sort of evergreen campaigns that we'll build, and then whenever a user or a third party needs to reference them, or reference this page, then we'll in turn generate the link back to that. So the example I put here is we worked with one client on ranking them for employee engagement statistics, and we essentially pretty much like crowdsourced all the statistics from everything that was ranking plus their own data to create like this power page of employee engagement statistics. And what we found was whenever a journalist needed to cite, they were writing something around HR people or anything like that, and they just wanted a high level statistic of of some kind, they'll use one of ours and then they'll cite us as a source. And that's sort of the passive way to accumulate links as well in the background. So sort of the future of link building. So it's not just about building power and authority for your site, but also for the authors of that site as well. So if you've got a managing director, for example, that operates on the site, actually making sure that Google understands that they are an expert in their space. So the ways that you can do this outside of just a digital PR, and I've listed some here, so awards and accreditations, industry news, local chamber of commerce, even them going on a podcast across Spotify and Apple Music is really good, same with YouTube as well. If they publish a book on Amazon, even just having their name is a really good footprint. Now you don't necessarily need the link of the author back to the website. Just having the name, Google will build up essentially an entity of that author as an expert in a specific category. So a lot more of how we've adapted our link building processes is to sort of build up the expertise of the author. And of course, that helps from the user point of view, right? If they're ever sort of finding out about the managing director of a company or CEO of a company, they're going to have a pretty big footprint. And the example I put, he's obviously very popular in the SEO space, is Brian Dean. You put in Brian Dean, you get a nice author panel that looks a bit like this. This is essentially the goal of what we want to generate for a CEO, for a managing director, for example. A nice sort of local link building example, and this sort of shows the nuances of the types of links that you might build. So if I use the industrial cleaning example again, we might pitch in a story during winter to journalists that cover sort of home, maybe home and lifestyle sort of niches. We might generate a story like expert reveals 3 hacks keep a home mold free during the winter. We'll get a comment from our industrial cleaning client that will give us kind of 3 tips. We'll pitch that into press. They'll write about it. They'll cite us as a source, and that's a nice way to generate a link back to the site. If you do operate in the local sort of space, so you target a specific area, the quality of link that you need isn't as great as maybe if you're going after a super competitive like software term or something like that. So just doing the fundamentals correctly, so having citations in the equivalent of like a Yelp, a Yellow Pages, anywhere where they list your name, address, and phone number, just getting sort of 100 of those or so is really important. Building links from localized domains. So if you only serve Surrey as a region, essentially trying to get links from local websites that are also just based in service in Surrey. That's a really good sort of local signal for Google. Building up sort of authority bios with Web 2.0 and forums. Prior to the agency, I was all over Quora, and I used to go through and answer a lot of SEO questions in Quora and sort of various other sort of things like that. You can do the same in Reddit. And then also this is a little bit more advanced, but sort of building tier 2 links. So if you have a link back to your website, then actually building another link to go to that linking site to go to your website. So you're powering up the link that is pointing to your site. That's a little bit more on the advanced side, but it is a tactic that works really well. And of course, reporting as well. I briefly touched on it, but one of the biggest things that we can actually get out when you're doing sort of lead gen in particular is on your form, having just a how did you hear about us? And as silly as it sounds, you do get some really, really good insight into how people have come across you. So it might be that, the example here, and this was a session media example actually, but this is very typical. The user converted via organic search, but actually when we asked them how they hear about us, they said that they saw a post of mine on LinkedIn. So likely what happened was that they saw a post of mine on LinkedIn, they Googled session media, they clicked the first link, and then submitted an inquiry. Now, if we didn't have the how did you hear about us, we would have thought organic search would have essentially done the selling for the user, but actually it was LinkedIn. So you can get some really valuable insight from this. It's a very simple change, and it still works so effectively. When we do reporting, I mentioned we kind of build out these nice sort of real-time reporting dashboards. Would of course report on GA4 data. I know it's not everyone's reporting system, but we've found a way to make it work quite nicely. So, some of our clients, they want to see steady increases in traffic. They want to see new users to the site. They want to see increase in average session durations. Like absolutely fine. We'll monitor all of that. We'll also monitor sort of soft events as well. So if a user clicks on a register now button before they fill in a form, or a book now button before they fill in a form, that indicates intent. If we have a high volume of book now button clicks, but users don't fill in the form, we know that there's a drop off in the journey there somewhere. So it's really good insight for us. And of course, plugging in the CRM. So, in some cases like HubSpot or whatever, so we can see pipeline revenue coming through. I'm going to go through some sort of SEO campaign examples now. And this sort of ties it all together. So we worked on one software client, performance software. They had a few sort of minor technical issues that we resolved. So we put more of their important pages nearer to the home page. So essentially you could get up to those important pages via going through like a bigger menu on the home page. Made a huge difference. We optimized all key service pages. We're rolling out, depending on sort of the volume of keyword approval, sort of 8 to 10 blogs a month. And for the link building side, we ran a survey to the UK population asking if they'd ever lied on their CV before. Now, again, these guys were an employee engagement performance software. So there's a tie there between sort of a recruitment sort of category or the recruitment process and what this business offered. So yeah, asking population, sort of 1,500 people or so, how many people had lied during the recruitment process meant that it was sort of mainstream enough that it gave our outreach team plenty of sort of stories and avenues to go out of. And that gave us confidence that we could get good success with this. I think the one sort of underlying that I say to the outreach team is, if my mum would see that story on Facebook and stop and want to click on it, that's the winner. So we want to try and keep it as mainstream as possible to attract sort of broad appeal, which increases our likeliness of generating the coverage we need to get the successes. So we turned it into a nice sort of infographic. If you want a bit of insight into what the actual net result was, well, 32% admitted that they lied in the interview process. 30 UK, which is pretty crazy, right? But yeah, we managed to get some really cool placements across like Digital Journal, Yahoo Finance, plenty of others. Most importantly, it helped them rank for, I kind of put, we had like 1 or 2 target keywords for this business, but they ranked for loads of keywords. That generated 70+% in organic traffic. And their sort of sales system outside of just the service pages was ebook white paper downloads, and then the sales team would start nurturing them. So we saw a nice sort of uptick in the number of resource downloads as well. The campaign that we won the awards for, we built out, so CBD standards, they award sort of accreditations to businesses. So essentially they're in the learning sector. So we mined all of Udemy, which provides sort of online trainings. And we had a look at the quote unquote weirdest courses that generated over 100K. And we put this into a nice little microsite and just pitched it into the web. This stuff went pretty crazy, in particular in America, where they actually ended up ranking for just CPD in America. Like the hockey stick was about as sharp as I've ever seen it. Most importantly though, a 60% increase in leads, and obviously the ROI on this was over 1,000% as well. And this was a really good campaign that we ran for these guys. We did some work for a law firm, and essentially we wanted to understand the impact that TV shows had on lawyers choosing law as a career. Again, sort of a more rudimentary industry that we wanted to make quite interesting. So we polled 500 lawyers and essentially said, what influence did TV shows have on you choosing law? We then also gave like a list of shows. 56%, interestingly, said that TV shows had an influence on their career, which was far higher than we anticipated, but great for us, a great story. Nice sort of infographic, pitched it into press. The net outcome of this was they ranked for a bucket load of different like commercial law terms, employment law, various sort of other things. Importantly, generated 160% plus in sort of full fills through the site, and 40% increase in organic traffic as well, which was brilliant. 200 links we ended up generating from this campaign. It's absolutely incredible. And I actually nearly forgot, some of the placements we got: Lawyers Weekly, Legal Futures, really good, strong domains that are so specific to the category that the sort of link equity that Google will pass on these links would be crazy high. I think this is the final one. So an HR software provider, some of their providers, such as Sage, are spending sort of 6 figures monthly on SEO. We know this because we hired one of the guys last year that was working on that account. Our client obviously doesn't have budgets that stretch to that, so we needed to find ways in which we could still rank amongst them, but be super efficient with cost. So we've run a number of different campaigns, polls, some sort of around trust in HR. There were a few bits we did over COVID and various. We've run so many campaigns with these guys. They've worked with us for about 5 years, but we did have them at #1 for sort of HR software, HR systems. I think they're at #3 now. But the competitors around them, have sort of multi-million-pound budgets to operate on this. What we've found, or what we do, worked really effectively, still does to this day. And yeah, it's a nice sort of swing to sort of the good work that the team does. So, okay, cool. We have if anyone's sort of interested in understanding whether SEO could be a viable option for them, we do provide a free ranking report. With this, we'll just have a look at the keywords you're not ranking for, the cost to potentially sort of rank them over a long period of time. We'll have a look at the intent of those phrases, and essentially it just gives us an idea as to whether SEO would be a viable and profitable outcome for you as well. So I appreciate I've absolutely sort of rushed through this. Hopefully it's all recorded, so you can flick back. But yeah, if there's any sort of wider questions, feel free to drop me an email, hit me up on Twitter or whatever it is. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it, Richard. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay, yeah, so I've been listening intently through the whole thing, because one of the things I do for Spotler a lot is a lot of the content writing and managing the pages and making sure all sounds sensible. So actually I've taken a lot of notes from this. I'm going to watch the recording back myself anyway. So that was brilliant. I'm wrapped. I've got to remember I've actually got to talk now rather than just learning stuff from that. So those, of course, we're hosting this as a bit of a Spotler angle, and the SEO, as we said there, that's all about bringing that traffic to your website, and you touched on there a lot about the intent and what happens after they get on the website and what kinds of content drive that. And the angle for us is how Spotler Leads then takes advantage of what they've seen and uses things like IP tracking to find out who those people are that those are driving the clicks. And as I said, like looking at the increase in queries and conversions through those campaigns. I mean, I've taken the fact that about on average 98% of website visitors don't convert. So the number of visitors you're earning to get that level of engagement must be through the roof. And I think that's how Spotler Leads comes into the IP lookup, the web tracking platform, and then adds it in, as we said, adds it into Spotler CRM, whatever other CRM you're using, depending on how you're configured. If you're a Spotler user already, I suppose that's the thing, that if you've got a list of 500 organizations that you desperately love to work for, and then one of them, because you've done all this SEO work, comes across your site organically, you want to know about it. And then the Spotler integration brings that information through leads into CRM. So next time, whichever your sales team is running that area or that account, looks and goes, oh look, Jennifer, their marketing director, has actually been on the website and she's looked at our blog on the customer decision-making process. That's something I can talk about. I can call up and say, oh, hi, Jennifer, I saw you read this blog. How does what we've said compare to your personal experience of your customer journey? So that's what we get out of this. Ben, once again, thank you very much. And those guys listening, if you like these kind of webinar formats, we've got 2 lined up in June. One about how our solution is kind of designed for, or the section of our solution is designed for e-commerce conversion. So again, that once people have gotten to your website because you've done all this SEO work, what do you do with them then to make sure they actually spend money? A bit later on in June, we've got a guest speaker from the DMA talking about new privacy and data regulations replacing GDPR, because that's an EU law, and now post Brexit we don't necessarily have to follow GDPR anymore. There's the space for our own solutions to develop. So we're going to talk about what they are, what the DMA see coming through. And then if you're, again, we're back to localization that we talked about right at the beginning, if you're around either Southampton or Manchester in June, toward middle and end of June, we'll be at the marketing showcase events on the 13th and the 25th, free to attend, quite small scale events. They run about 8 or 9 seminars throughout the day, and then we'll be there on a stand. We can come and say hi to us, talk with us a bit more detail about anything about the Spotler solution that we haven't covered today or that comes up. So whether you're current client, thinking about it, brand new, and just want to find out more about us, it'd be great to see you at those. And then next steps, we're currently doing a free trial of the Spotler leads for 14 days, so you can see the impact of all this SEO work that you're going to do. You can see those leads come in and work out what you're going to do with them next. If you're currently a customer, you've got your account manager's email address, drop them a line and sort out Spotler leads if you're not using it already. If this is brand new to you, contact at Spotler CRM, at spotler.co.uk, and we'll pick it with a demo, speak to you, work out what we can do to help you there. And thank you very much. I enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Ben, thank you very much for sharing all your wisdom, and everyone else, I hope we see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. And it was a great chatting this stuff through.